Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or the Philosopher's Stone, depending on the mood you're in, from 2001. And with the release of the Fantastic Beasts this week, I thought it'd be cool to, every time there's a Fantastic Beasts movie, to review a Harry Potter movie. So as this is going to be the first Fantastic Beasts film, I thought I would review the first Harry Potter movie to introduce a new series every time they make a Fantastic Beasts movie, or if it bombs, the only time I do this. Anyway, so this movie came out at kind of an interesting time for blockbusters and for fantasy films. It came out in November of 2001, November 16th, 2001. And it came out about a month before The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. And fantasy film, in terms of blockbusters, really took off after the 1-2 punch of Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. Whereas Lord of the Rings is very auteur-driven by Peter Jackson and is introducing a new kind of film language for fantasy films and blockbusters and a more dynamic way to shoot things and with special effects. The early Harry Potter films don't really feel as earth-shattering. They were for most people who enjoyed them, especially this one has a real childlike sense of wonder and cheer to it that's really great, but it feels very much like a very studio-controlled big blockbuster of the early 2000s. Although this is probably one of, if not the best version of that I can possibly think of, it's still part of that era. Although at the time it was hailed as being kind of a new classic and a timeless kind of a film, and Warner Brothers was very happy, and it ended up being, at the time, the second highest grossing film of all time. It didn't outplace Titanic, but it made over $900 million and was incredibly successful. But some of the special effects, some of the pacing, some of the way it's shot aren't as dynamic as what we would eventually see from blockbusters after Harry Potter. Now, when you're making that change and there's that transition period, certainly not everybody's going to completely break the mold, and you're going to have people who are obviously taking on things from the past. The choice of Chris Columbus is a very obvious choice of that. You wouldn't really pick Chris Columbus to do a big budget blockbuster or Pixels. Fuck Pixels. And that wasn't very good and didn't do well. So I guess somebody should have listened. But the whole idea of having Chris Columbus do a high profile film like Harry Potter, it showed a studio who is kind of grasping at things like, well, we don't make a lot of these fantasy movies. Who's good with kids? And that was kind of Chris Columbus's main thing, is his role in Home Alone. And he was a studio safe director. And you get a very studio safe kind of yes man-y movie, but it still has that joy to it. One of the things I love about the Harry Potter films, and probably the books if I read more than the first three, how they kind of age with the protagonists, because this feels like a movie for an 11-year-old, which Harry Potter is in this film. It's a movie you can watch with kids of any age. This film kind of invites you in and shows you the world of Hogwarts. It's a very good introduction in that way. It's interesting because they really knew what they were doing in a way with this film and understood exactly how they were directing it. And you could compare it to the Captain America films in that the first Captain America movie is done by Joe Johnston, who's a very workman-y kind of studio director, but he's very good at what he's doing. Chris Columbus, this is probably some of his better direction if you compare the films he made before, like Stepmom and 9 Months and stuff. The direction's very poor, especially on a technical level. Really showed how good of a big budget director he could be while making Harry Potter, and how wonderful it was to see a movie like this in 2001 that was kind of like a big budget fantasy film before that really was a thing, but also the wonderfulness and childlike wonder that goes throughout Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone that really invites you in and welcomes you to a wonderful cinematic world. Harry Potter doesn't know he's a witch, he's just living with the Dursleys underneath the stairs until one day he starts getting notes from Hogwarts to come to the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and comes and realizes he is a massive celebrity because he has killed he who should not be named, Voldemort, and meets up with two friends, Ron and Hermione, starts taking his first year at Hogwarts to learn witchcraft and wizardry. They are having a good first year of school, and then they realize something is afoot and that Snape might be trying to take down Harry Potter. They feel that since the Philosopher's Stone is actually being kept, or the Sorcerer's Stone is actually being kept in Hogwarts, that he's trying to come after it so he can get eternal life or bring Voldemort back with its powers. So Ron, Harry, and Hermione have to hopefully find out a way to stop this and stop Voldemort Voldemort from coming back and attacking the wizardry world. I saw this actually when it came out, and when I saw this I was older, like a senior in high school when it came out. I had read the first book and I was excited because it looked cool, and we didn't really get a lot of fantasy stuff then, so it was like a unique thing. I was kind of the only person who's older who saw it. It was either kids or their parents at this time. The Alfonso Cuarón and Mike Newell and David Yates days hadn't started yet, and this was directed by Chris Columbus, and so people mainly thought of it as a kids film, and I don't think they're wrong. It's very much probably the most kid-like of all the Harry Potter films. I do remember going and I really liking it, seeing it at the Senator in Baltimore, and leaving and seeing a bunch of my friends' younger siblings going into it. I saw everyone in the theaters. I didn't have to like see them later and go, hey, there's something about these Harry Potter movies. I've always really loved the magic and the wonderfulness of it, and I even like the book a lot. And I think this film introduced a different way of adaptations that we're still kind of stuck in the idea of being very faithful to your adaptations. The screenplay and a lot of the screenplays for the Harry Potter films are written by Steve Kloves, who does a really great job. He doesn't really get enough respect for how great a lot of the screenplays for the Harry Potter movies are, but he does it very faithfully, probably because of all the fans. Originally, they had a lot of ideas developing the Harry Potter franchise, and one was to just combine a bunch of the books in one, which sounds like a horrible idea, and I'm glad they didn't do. Probably one of the side effects to that is because they're adapting each book, they kept in a lot of details that I'm not sure they need to be elaborated on as long as they are. The whole ghost thing in these first two movies is a little stupid. Just keeping in details that I think like Cuarón and Newell and David Yates understood what to keep in and what not, and feels like in the early films they're like, let's keep almost everything and make this film feel really, really long. Like, I love this movie. At the end I'm always very happy, but there's certain parts, particularly when he's getting obsessed with the mirror, that I'm like, guys, hurry, how long is this fucking thing? Let's put in all these erroneous details. Let's have all these things, like they often repeat information. That one scene with the ghost where John Cleese is like, Harry Potter is the first seeker in 100 years. And then like Ron and Harry have the same exchange of dialogue. Clearly this was made for children because it like really pushes down hard on the fact that you're getting some of this info. It's like, yeah, he's the seeker. I get it. But I think it kind of works in the end because of the story. It almost is written a very British way. If you watch any of the BBC productions, they just so faithfully adapt a book. It's insane how faithfully. This was developed and pitched to a lot of different directors. It was pretty much Spielberg's to lose and chose to do AI instead. There was a while they were talking about doing it animated, kind of computer animated. I'm really glad they didn't, especially for this time period. And he actually wanted Haley Joel Osment to voice Harry, but J.K. Rowling made a stipulation that only English actors could be in the Harry Potter films. But after that, they considered Terry Gilliam was J.K. Rowling's choice, and apparently there was some negotiation. Everyone's always wondered what happened with that. I don't know. But other than Chris Columbus, who eventually got the job, they considered Peter Weir, Jonathan Demme, Mike Newell, Alan Parker, Wolfgang Peterson, Rob Reiner, Tim Robbins, which just seems weird to me, and M. Night Shyamalan, who actually turned it down, who apparently they offered it to. So I'm kind of glad that happened. This film actually was kind of rushed into production. It seems to be a very early 2000s thing with blockbusters where they really push them through production, get them out as soon as possible. Clearly Harry Potter was very big at the time, so I understand it to a certain degree. A similar thing happened to Bryan Singer with the first X-Men movie, and the special effects and some of the shots you feel like they could have used some more time. And in this, I think the special effects don't look very good, particularly Voldemort on the back of the professor's head. You have the scene where he gets the snitch and the camera pans around the Quidditch stadium, which looks like super awful. And anytime you have one of the CG kind of marionette people, like when Harry's on that troll, when Neville falls from the broom, or when people fall from the Quidditch thing, and you can kind of think like, oh, it's the time period, special effects weren't as good. Chris Columbus is actually embarrassed by it, and he was kind of pushed and made to make it very quickly. And Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring came out the same year, and it looks a lot better. They just did not give them enough time, and it's very obvious they didn't. They originally wanted this to come out like in the summer. It came out in November, which to me is like Harry Potter movie time, although I think like half of them came out in the summer. But Chris Columbus, I still think this is probably going to go down as one of his better directed films. It's definitely one of the more remembered ones. These first two have such a different feel to them than the other ones. Things progressively get darker over the series, which actually I think works for it. It's not just, you know, things got darker and edgier. There was an actual point to it, the more seriousness of Voldemort and showing their their age and maturity and understanding more complexities to the world. And in this, it's like a kid's adventure, and that's how a kid would understand an adventure like this. And you could probably make a case for how they change with Harry's kind of perspective as a young man, which I think is interesting in a way. This has always been one that I've kind of cherished because it was kind of like, oh cool, they did it. But unlike Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man, which there are definite problems with it, but I still like it because I still remember the thrill of seeing Spider-Man on the big screen, this movie I do feel like has hindered by its time period. And it did feel like they knew it was going to just print money as long as they're fairly accurate to the book. Spielberg actually said it's like a slam dunk. It's like you just put your card in an ATM and $1 billion spits out. Everyone knew this thing was going to do well. I particularly love the cast. I love, Maggie Smith. Richard Harris's Dumbledore is interesting because I so got used to him as Dumbledore, but obviously Michael Gabon would play Dumbledore in more films. I can't imagine Richard Harris playing Dumbledore in more than like just the first two. I kind of attribute him more to this version of like Chris Columbus's vision, and Michael Gabon more with the Quran and Yates kind of era. I like him in it. He does feel like he's like an older actor playing in a kid's film more than the other actors are, and with that change of adaptation, I don't know, had he lived, I don't know if that would have worked as well, but he works within the context of these films. And I love Alan Rickman, although he doesn't really have as much screen time as I remembered him having, but Alan Rickman as Snape is just wonderful. I do actually like all the kids in this. Their performances are so different from what they would eventually become. Almost everybody who worked on these films always comments like you get to really see them progress as actors throughout these films, which is kind of wonderful. They got so lucky with the kids in this film because they all turned out to be, even like the guy who plays Neville and stuff, and Tom Fenton, and everybody turned out to be a great actor by the end of it. And I really believe that. Like, I think that's what made this film series so good, is because you had so many good adult actors, but the kid actors actually kept improving. It's really kind of amazing. I like Daniel Radcliffe in this. I've always really liked Daniel Radcliffe. It's interesting to see him be more of a kid. I think his kid sense of wonder really helps the film. Same with Rupert Grint as Ron. But my all-time favorite actor in this is Emma Watson, and I'm sorry, I love listening to her. All the kids in this film have this like enunciation thing, like almost like it's like watching an early sound movie. The way people enunciate is so pronounced, it's like ridiculous. It's like a joke almost, but nobody does as bad as Emma Watson. I'm not laughing at her. It's almost like you're watching your little cousin or niece and nephew go through a weird phase, and you just think it's like really cute. Oh my god. Oh, Emma Watson. It's just like one of my favorite things she's ever done. It's just so funny. I'm sorry. When she's like, it's not Levioso, it's Leviosa. Or she's like, sorry. I don't know why it makes me laugh. It's just so funny. When she's like, or worse, expelled. If someone made a cut of every time Emma Watson talks in this movie, it would make my life so much better. Oh my god, it's just so funny. She's really good as Hermione. I really like her as an actress, but the way she talks is just so funny. I just can't get past it. I'm sorry. I was just like, she's such a kid, and it's really cute, and she's so good at Hermione. Oh my god, it's making me cry because it's so funny. It's like she really worked on how to speak English or something. Sorry. Oh, one of the great joys in life is Emma Watson's voice in this movie. And she doesn't do it as well in the next one. That's another strike against the Chamber of Secrets. I've always really liked how this film can do the kind of wonderfulness that the only thing people could compare it to at the time was like Wizard of Oz and like Star Wars and stuff. Now it's like we have so many of these fucking things, but no one knew what to compare it to. And I think that's what made it so special. I don't know if it's as special in that regard, but I still think it's wonderful seeing Hogwarts and being reintroduced to everybody and understanding the world of Hogwarts, which this film does very well. What this film introduced was giving us the fantasy films, giving us YA films, but I think it also gave us this film tradition of these movies, and with a beautiful score by John Williams, it felt like Hollywood really trying to do something, put on a show. And I always love that about the Harry Potter films. I think this is a film I always look back on fondly. I don't think it's the best Harry Potter film. I think the films would eventually progress And as studios were more willing to take chances on more interesting directors with this kind of affair, the Harry Potter films did much better because of that. It's being held back because it is a costly property. They knew it was going to be a hit, and they wanted someone who could deliver it and do it decently well. I'm glad they didn't Hollywood it up and Americanize it. I like the English feel of it. I like how it feels special and unique, and that they decided to do each novel instead of just cramming it all in to make like a terrible movie or something. It fulfills on being a great piece of kids entertainment in a way that's not irritating. It's inviting and wonderful, the way looking back on a good kids novel can be. This might be kind of the lighter of the films and kind of the kickback with your nieces and nephews on Thanksgiving in the basement kind of a movie, and made in a very studio controlled way at a time when studio controlled stuff honestly wasn't that exciting. But it's so beautiful at doing all of that. I still will probably look back on this fondly, even if it is a little dated, even if it isn't the best one. But it kicks off the series and lets you know kind of broad kind of entertainment that this is really going to present to you, and how wonderful these films would be at that. So if you have seen Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.